Is that all right with you if I record?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, first question. Has gender inequality impacted your life? Why or why not?
Yeah, I think gender inequality has almost in like a almost subversive way impacted my life from start to finish. I think it is just observations of um sexism that have come up from when you're in school and the boys get called on more than the girls, to seeing who gets job opportunities, um, seeing the way women's voices are or are not heard around various issues, and women just in general being discounted for all that they can bring to the table. And I think I've seen all of that in varying stages, from school to my first jobs out of college to my working life, and particularly for women of color, it's like really really present, and that has really led me to down this road of doing the work that I do to uplift women of color, support women's leadership, getting more diverse voices around the table, because it like if I don't do it, who will? Like, I see the problem, so I need to be part of the solution rather than just sitting around and complaining that I can't get ahead, or the system is rigged. So let me try and figure out how I can change the system and help not just myself but help thousands of women around me.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next question. Do you think gender equality is attainable in the United States? Why or why not?
I think on the books, gender equality, we can get there. And I think the codification and implementation of the Equal Rights Amendment is a piece of that. I think there has to be a tremendous culture shift in this country in how women are depicted, the roles that women have, like in the media, on camera, off camera, all the way around in the workforce. So I think it's we can take some significant steps forward, but the you know the patriarchal system is so ingrained in all of us, and what are appropriate gender roles, and having giving creating a permission structure for women to do whatever they want. I mean, we have a lot of that, but it is very much still, well, what a, she doesn't have kids. Why doesn't she have a partner? How is she gonna, she's so ambitious, and all of these traits that are traditionally masculine traits are seen as negative traits when seen in women. So I think there is, like, you can have, like, okay, you must have equal number of women and men in different roles. You must have a concrete effort to recruit more women into underrepresented roles and things like that. And gender gender neutral HR policies around family leave, and all of that, which are huge steps forward. But I think until we dismantle the what is just like branded into our psyche about what traditional gender roles are, we won't truly have gender equality. So I don't know if we can actually get there. I think we can move a lot further than where we are now, but to have true gender equity is going to be, I think, more than a notion.
Yeah, you kind of already touched on it, but what do we as a society need to do to achieve gender equality?
Yeah, I think as I said, it's a shift. It's a culture shift. It is a you know, deliberate reprogramming of how we see all people. They're not just, and I think, men get put in boxes as well. And that's where you end up with toxic masculinity. And, so it's not just the women that are negatively affected. I think the men are negatively affected by it as well. But I think there's definitely legal recourse. There are policies and procedures that can be put on the books that can move the needle forward. But I think, that combined with, critical analysis and unpacking of how women are depicted in the media, how men are depicted in the media, can really do a lot of work to, restructure what we think of in terms of gender roles and gender equity, and seeing like a woman can go, and it's not just like, oh, she can have kids and do this. It's that both are totally okay, and you shouldn't second guess her for doing either. Or what, path 3 that is her own path. That it is not an affront to femininity or her, role as, as a child bearer. That she can do all the things that she wants to do.
Yeah, thank you. So I know that you are the co-founder of Higher Heights. So can you speak to your experience with that organization, what inspired you to start it, and what impact do you see your work having?
Sure. So my good friend Glenda Carr and I were inspired to start Higher Heights for many of the reasons that we have already discussed here today. Seeing the inequality, seeing the marginalization, particularly of Black women in the political sphere, and that, Black women are 7% of the US population, but we have just cracked 4% of elected officials across the country. So that was a huge, huge piece for us of how do we create a space where Black women can run, win, and lead, and that they have the tools that they need to be successful, whether they are activists, voters, activists, or elected leaders. And so we created a space to make that happen, because we knew that there wasn't going to be a majority or a legacy organization that would address the needs of Black women the way an organization built for and by Black women would do it. So that's how we started it now 11 years ago. And we grew from an idea on the back of a placemat to now the largest online platform for Black women's political engagement. And we, in addition to like saying, running through the stats of the number of women we've helped elect and amplify and support, it is also created a space across the board that has given Black women a permission structure to really engage deeply in the political process. Black women have always been part of the American body politic. We have not ever really gotten the recognition of our role as voters, as campaign staff, as operatives. But it's now, time for us to, fully take our seat at the table. And creating Higher Heights, the goal was to do just that, to really amplify all of the ways that Black women, frankly, have carried American democracy on our backs from the moment that we had the right to vote. In some cases, it was, the 19th Amendment. And in some cases, it wasn't until the Voting Rights Amendment in 64 that Black women in this country, truly got the opportunity to exercise their franchise. So how did we did this because we knew from our networks that there were likely hundreds, if not thousands and tens of thousands of Black women across the country who were looking for a political home, looking for a place that was going to be affirming and nurturing and provide them useful tools to be able to, create better communities for themselves, their families, and the nation overall. And so we just, built it by word of mouth. And it's been an amazing journey. And, we're so proud of the work that has been done. And the work is not just the work of Glenda and I and the team, but of all of these women who have stepped forward and looking at the way that they have changed the landscape because they have had an environment where they've been allowed to and been heard. So not just the women who've been elected, but the women who are voters, and thinking about 2017 and the Alabama special election when Black women came out in droves to defeat Roy Moore and save the country from a pedophile. So, thinking about all of those women who have done that work, that is why we do, that's why we did and why we continue to do what we do. It's not about us as individuals. It is about Black women in America who have been, the most underserved and underrepresented group, or one of the most underserved and underrepresented groups in this country.
Yeah, that's really inspiring the work that you do. So thank you for that. What are the biggest struggles or obstacles you encounter in your fight for gender equality?
I think, interestingly, one of the biggest struggles is educating people on the fact that we don't have gender equality. That yes, there are places where there is, you know, there's more equality than others. There are scenarios where you experience more equality and more equity, but it is not uniform. It is not protected in many cases. And, as we are seeing now with the fall of Roe, that depending on where you are in what state you live in and what county you live in determines whether or not you have bodily autonomy. So really threading that needle of uplifting the fact that we don't have equality, gender equality, and the work that needs to be done, because it feels very challenging that at this point in time we still don't have it. What can possibly be done? How can I possibly make a difference? I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face. And then the other part of it is, just by even pushing it, we are threatening the patriarchy, and that is what this country has been built on. And it is something that has been reinforced by men and by women over the years, and it's not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, so in terms of intersectionality between gender and race, how has the struggle for gender equality differed for women of color, and have you had any personal experiences with that?
Well, I think when you look at gender equality through a intersectional lens, it is more than just saying women have the right to do X. It is really thinking about the economic security, thinking about the ability to make decisions on how to educate your children, and being able to really set a path for yourself, because all of this is so interlocked. The criminal justice system, and how women of color are treated throughout is really abhorrent. And as we've seen, we keep going back to the Dobbs decision and the fall of Roe, but it is just such a clear a clear demonstration of the challenges. You know, if you are poor, if you are a woman of color, or a pregnant person of color, your ability to get abortion care, should you need it, will be challenged. It was challenging before the fall of Roe, and is even more so now. If you are a white cisgender middle class to upper middle class wealthy woman, you will always be able to have access to abortion care, whether it is being able to afford to travel out of state or go to that private doctor that nobody talks about. And you're able to pay out of pocket for those services. These are the things that frankly will never affect they affect white women, but it is just so glaring how much it will impact women of color. And I think gender equality, you think of childcare, and think about paid family leave, and who is most likely to work in a low wage job. It is a woman of color. So if she is already working in a low wage job, and she doesn't have paid family leave, and she needs to take off to take care of herself or take care of her family, that is continuous disenfranchisement. So I think that, thinking of it through the multifacetedness of women's lives, that, and when you factor in systemic racism on top of that, on top of gender inequity and equality, that it really presents a continuous problem. So, I mean, I think I have, my personal background, I, was blessed to grow up in a, upper middle class family in suburban Maryland. And I had a lot of, advantages because of that upbringing. But also at the same time, the racism was always apparent. I was the one of a handful of Black children in elementary school, and the numbers increased some in high school, but not by much, and all that goes into it. But understanding how my experience is the little box that I lived in, and realizing that was not the experience of most. And how do I use the knowledge that I have and the compassion and the empathy that I have to uplift other people continues to motivate me to do all that I can, because it's just by circumstance that I was born where I was, and I could have been born somewhere else. And so I can't take it for granted that I am where I am. So I have a lot of work to do.
Thank you. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the ERA has been ratified and all that's left is for it to be published, correct? That was
So
confusing me.
it
I'm
has it
sorry.
has it has been ratified.
Okay.
It could be published
Okay.
if the president directs the archivist uh,
Okay.
to publish, but because it was ratified with the time limit that expired,
Mhm.
and the last three states ratified after the expiration, there is a lot of argument that it has not actually been ratified, and there are also states that have rescinded their original ratification. So there is a lot of back and forth, but there are 30 there, the fact is there are 38 states.
Okay.
The Senate has tried to the House and the Senate, more so in the House, the Senate has slowly trying to move the process along, has voted to remove the time limit so that the ERA could actually be published. And Barring that, which it has not been able to get out of the Senate, the president could direct the archivist to publish. We have been working on that for a very, very, very long time, and he won't budge. So it will likely end up going back to the Supreme Court to decide whether or not it has been fully ratified.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. So that informs my next question. Once the ERA is eventually published, if it is after it goes through all those processes, how do you think we can enforce it? How do you expect it to manifest in our society? What impact do you think it will have?
Well, I think the key is always going to be enforcement with all of these amendments to the Constitution, laws coming out of Congress. It is the enforcement mechanism that is going to be key. I think there are attorneys general across the country in various states that are poised, ready, and actively waiting to enforce the Equal Rights Amendment. There are several states since the time, according to the Constitution, after the 38th state it has ratified, it takes 2 years before it is actually law. So there are a couple of states who have already started going through their statutes to put in gender neutral language, looking at how their statutes affect women differently than men, and going in and saying, okay, well, we need to actually, there's this land provision somewhere, and land can only pass to the second born son, and if there is no second born son, then it passes to the dog, some craziness, but really going in and looking at that and seeing how it affects women. So there are it's going to come down to the attorneys general. It will come down to the Justice Department, as we have seen with implementation of other things. And then it will also end up back in the courts. And that, I think, is where folks are most fearful, given the current composition of the Supreme Court and the makeup of the federal bench overall, that should these cases come before the court, that they would not be successful because of the conservative leanings of many of the judges and justices.
Yeah. So last question. Why do you think it is important to fight for gender equality? And what would you tell someone, perhaps like a man or something, who thinks that the fight for gender equality doesn't matter since it doesn't affect them?
It affects all of us, because this is not just like paid family leave is something that affects all of us. We have seen men as well as women take advantage of pay equity and paid family leave and their ability to take care of their families. When a rising tide raises all ships. So if you provide equity so that women are secure, women are safe, that they have the economic security and bodily autonomy to take care of themselves, they can better take care of society overall, which means we are raising strong families. It means that we have, men have supportive partners. It means that they have everything works better when those who are most marginalized are actually brought up to equity. So, it does affect you. If you have a wife, a daughter, a mother, a sister, it affects you. And it, from not just like your orbit, but also your personal life as well.
Yeah, so last thing, is there just anything else you'd like to say at all?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. But so tell me more about this project.
Yeah, so essentially, I realized I did not send an updated version of what I'm doing. I kind of changed my idea along the way, but essentially, what I'm doing is exploring the question, is gender equality attainable in the United States? And through some of the research that I've done, and then also these interviews with people like you, which I really appreciate, I'm kind of trying to come to some sort of consensus on this question and just gauge the opinions of different people.
Okay, cool. Very good. Very good.
Thank
Well,
you.
let me know if you have any additional questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And I wish you best of luck.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.